Welcome to Speaking Recovery with NIcole Gearing. Hi, I'm Billy Montana, and we're Speaking Recovery with NIcole Gearing. Hi, NIcole.
Hi, everyone. How are you? I hope everyone's having a great day before Independence Day. Such an exciting time. Everybody stay safe out there. My name is NIcole Gearing, and I live in Sonora, California. I like to say that Yosemite National Park is in my backyard. I'm in the foothills of the Sierras. I am married to my husband, Jim, and I have 3 boys.
Awesome. So, NIcole, this is our first podcast, and
Yes.
we're going to really make a big difference in the world, hopefully. You're on a mission, and you want to help people. So tell me a little bit about your story. I know you're the California Celebrate Recovery State Rep. So how did that happen for you?
Well, it was a long journey, and so the backstory of it is about 15 years ago, maybe even 17 years ago, I developed migraine headaches, and I could not find out what was causing them. And so I went to many different specialists across the nation and as well as California, and nothing organic was going on. And so during that time period of 6 years, they were giving me prescription anti-anxiety meds and pain medication. And I remember taking them, and I remember specifically telling the doctor, I'm concerned about getting addicted to these. And they said, well, we're concerned for you, but we're just going to take this temporarily, give this to you temporarily. Well, it very quickly, within a matter of 2 months, I found myself addicted to them, which started a long journey and a long battle of being addicted to them. And so moving forward a little bit more, I ended up going to 5 different treatment programs. 2 of those were for 1 month. 1 of them was for 3 months. And the last one and final one for me was for 2 months. And that's where I decided, you know what, I've got to change my life. And so that's when I just said yes to God and looked for alternatives for those migraine headaches and said no to the drugs, and started a long, very heart-wrenching journey. And it motivates me. That journey, I'm reminded each and every day of what I went through, and that motivates me to help other people who are suffering in silence. And I like to work with them and get them connected with Celebrate Recovery. It is a program for anybody with hurts, habits, or hangups. So when I came out of treatment, I found Celebrate Recovery and fell in love with it because there wasn't any judgment. There was lots of love. There was acceptance, and it was a place that I could take off my mask and just share, my sadness, my fear, my insecurities. And I was really able to learn a new way of life with developing new tools. And so that's what started my journey to having a Celebrate Recovery that I started. My husband and I ran it for 6.5 years, and then I became state rep 2 years ago. And it's just an amazing time. We love Celebrate Recovery. We call them our forever family, and they've helped a lot of people. They have there's 33,000 churches worldwide that have Celebrate Recovery. So they are definitely making a wave.
That's amazing. I mean, most people too think that Celebrate Recovery is just about alcoholism or drug addiction, but it's much more than that, isn't it?
It is. Actually, Celebrate Recovery is for anybody, again, that has hurts, habits, or hangups, which would be any one of us.
It could be a loss of a relationship. It could be any kind of a loss, right? Like somebody
Yes.
has anger issues or some other kind of thing that, is hanging them up in life.
Divorce, it could be grief, it can be just anxiety, not just, because anxiety is very debilitating. Depression, anxiety, just fear, where people tend to isolate at home and don't really feel like they can trust anybody. So it's a place where you can go and just share how you feel. And that's really the key to recovery, is just talking from your heart and sharing what's going on, and not keeping that bottled up inside.
So on a weekly basis, you get to see people's lives change right in front of you, don't you?
I do. And it's so rewarding and it's so amazing. And it's just motivating. It just keeps, to see those miracles tangibly in front of me, people's lives change. It just motivates me to want to continue to do it more and more.
Right. And it's not easy for people to come up there and just admit they have a problem or admit they need help.
No, it's hard and it's embarrassing, and it's vulnerability is tough for each and every one of us. I mean, we all as humans kind of have a tendency to want to hide or just pretend like everything is okay and we've got it all together. And then we also live in a society that promotes that as well. And so Celebrate Recovery is a place where you can take off that mask and just completely, say, hey, I'm not okay. And it's okay that I'm not okay.
Confronting yourself is the hardest thing, isn't it?
Matter of fact, that's what it took for me to finally get the help that I needed. I was at the end of my rope, like that 4th treatment program that I talked about.
Yeah.
I was just done. It's like, I can't continue this. I'm definitely addicted to these drugs. It's definitely affecting my life. It's about to take my life. It's affected my family. It's affected every area of my life. And there's something to be said, and a lot of people have heard it said you have to hit your rock bottom, and it's really true. Right. You do, but not necessarily the rock bottom of the addiction, the rock bottom of yourself. You have to come to the end of yourself where, you know what, I don't know how to do life, and I need to figure out how to do it. So where can I go to support it?
Yeah, I've seen things before with other people, but also with myself, sure, that when you look back, there is a downward spiral that people start to experience. And little things, little messages that either God's given you or the universe or whatever you believe in, but there are signs before you have a major problem in your life. And most of the time we ignore those signs because it's just not painful enough. And then when we finally get to a point where something tragic happens, I can't tell you, you have to change because I see it. Or so you can't tell me, Billy, you have to change because you can't see it, but I can. And you're messing up and the things are happening to you. And if you don't change, things really bad are going to happen to you. And how many times does that advice get ignored? Because we can't deal with it.
And so, which leads me to bringing up enabling and how it gets so confusing with love. Enabling is so confusing with love. And so what happened for me is my husband began to, he just was loving me so much because he didn't know what to do. And so what happened for him in my story and in our family is he sought help before I did. And then that counselor was telling him, you know what, you have to let her go and get to the end of herself. Yeah. And it's so scary. And he said he's never been so scared in his entire life because he thought I was going to die. And I had lots of close calls anyway. So, he learned in his walk to the tough love, to stop enabling. Yeah. And then
That's hard to do, especially when you love somebody.
Yes, yeah. So hard. He said it was one of the hardest things he's ever done because, I was at home, and this is, of course, before the 5th treatment program where I completely surrendered to God and said, take my life. But shortly before that, I was living at home and I was relapsing. And so he was going to see a counselor, and that counselor was working with him. And he said to him very clearly, if you want her to live and you want her to have a shot at this, you have to set a boundary and not enable her and tell her that she has to leave. So he came home that night and told me I had to leave. So I packed my things and left. And we were separated for 8 months. And
I didn't realize it was that long. Wow.
Yeah. And so,
That's a lot of strength on Jim's part.
Oh, completely. He really stepped to the plate. And I think that he listened. He listened to somebody that understood about it. And that's what was the shift for him, and the change for him is like, I've tried everything. And for him, it was like, I've tried everything. I've done everything. And I'm literally loving her to death. And although it's not at all his fault, it was my decisions, but he didn't know what to do. And that's my message to so many families and so many people that don't know what to do. Talk to somebody who's been there. Get connected with a resource for recovery so that they can help navigate you in taking the proper steps to actually create a space for that person to have a fighting chance.
Yeah, I would imagine that it's very hard when you love somebody and you're married to somebody and you have children with them,
Oh yeah.
and they tell you, look, I got this, I haven't been doing it, but they know, because they know the sober you, and then they know the you on pills or alcoholism, whatever, and when they see you like that, they want to believe you, but then they get to the point where they don't, and you really can't be trusted until you get help. So it's such a devastating thing, because if you think about it, you start saying to yourself, what did I do? Like, does she not love me enough? Did I do this wrong? Did I do that wrong? What did I do wrong?
What's wrong with me? Right.
And some people, if they're not strong, could go completely just devastate themselves and either go the other way and continue to enable because they just can't deal with, and they don't have the strength, or
right. Mm-hmm.
or they just fall apart themselves. So, what's the answer to that? Like, how do you, I mean, because, obviously the 8 months being away trying to straighten this out that's a lot of strength to have. So, on your end, you're trying to deal with getting to that rock bottom place, and he's trying to desperately, in his mind, I'm sure, praying and begging every day for something to happen for you to get back to where you should be.
And that's what it was. He would testify, if you were sitting here on this call right now, he would testify that it was God that literally was carrying him. And he was praying for my life to be spared. And he really wasn't. And for me, I'm so checked out that I had the easy part. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm loaded. And
right.
He's here in reality watching his wife die and his family die, wondering if he's going to be planning a funeral. It's just, it's hardcore. And so he would say, and it's what I would say, if you have a situation, somebody in your life where you're watching this happen, go to Celebrate Recovery and find out from other people who've walked this journey and take the steps that it takes to not enable anymore and to really implement tough love.
Yeah. I have a question for you as far as how it was for you. And you said that it was easy for you because you were checked out. Like, did you lose track of time? Did you realize it was that long?
Yes. Oh, yes. I lost track of time. I would be up, I would be sleeping most of the day. I was just medicating. And at that point, I was having what was called rebound pain headaches because I was taking so many, because when you abuse pain pills and you take opioids, it causes rebound pain. So it's like I was in a constant headache. My body hurt. I had a headache. I could never get to a place where I didn't have headaches anymore. I was just really, really sick. I got in an apartment and I was isolated and I was by myself, and people would try and check on me and knock on the door. I wouldn't answer the door. It was a really, I don't want to paint a picture that it was easy. It was easy in the sense that I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to die. Jim is over here thinking she's going to die, knowing that she's going to die if she continues this. That's the part that was easy for me because I was so checked out. Yeah, I lost track of time. I lost so many friends. I had people who didn't believe me anymore. My kids would come over and check on me, and when I was okay and not medicated, they would be super excited, thinking this was the end, mom's back. And then to find out that I would do it, I'd be medicating all over again. So,
right. Was there a time that you remember that maybe you woke up one day and you didn't know what day or what time it was, and you just was shocked at how much time had passed, maybe?
Yes, I really was. That was at the very end, that was occurring quite a bit. It's very, very scary. And I really do believe that it's by the grace of God that I'm here, and so many people praying for me. And again, it only takes one person in the family to go to a counselor or go to Celebrate Recovery and say, I don't know what to do. Will you, and listen, will you tell me what to do? I'm going to listen and I'm going to apply. And by God's grace, Jim listened, and I'm here today because of it. And I'm able to help a lot of people.
I know a few times when I had some things going on in my life, I had gone to see my pastor because I didn't know what else to do. And I remember one time my pastor, like I was just totally convinced that I was going to get a divorce. And I expected him to just kind of be like, okay, you'll get through it or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But he kind of shocked me with his response. He was like, no, and he took 4 hours out of his day to talk to me. And I'll never forget it because he's very busy. So take 4 hours to talk to me and try to set me right. I mean, eventually the marriage did end, but he kind of showed me that, that you can repair things. Things can be fixed. And, you just can't always take the easy way out. So it's nice to have somebody that you could go speak to that has a little bit of wisdom and can be straight with you without, sugarcoating things or just telling you what you want to hear. And I think that's what a lot of this is not, I guess a lot of people too, like if I was Jim in Jim's shoes and I went to somebody at Celebrate Recovery, or if I went to a counselor, or I went to a pastor and I asked him what to do, in my mind, I'm probably like wanting him to tell me what I want to hear.
Sure, absolutely.
So it makes it hard when you have to go out and actually be tough to somebody that you love.
And that's where the tough love is. And I really feel like it's God. I really feel like it's God in these people. I feel like it was God for you and that pastor telling you what you needed to do at that time. Just like that God being in that counselor telling Jim, you need to go home and she's got to get to the end of herself before this is going to work.
Yeah. I have a few questions that I know must be on people's minds during these trying times. And the first is, what kind of advice would you give people who are struggling right now that feel alone?
Reach out to anybody. Just pick up the phone, reach out, call a friend, meet a friend, and start sharing.
Yeah.
You're only as sick as your secrets is something that we say in Celebrate Recovery. And so we don't want to have secrets. We don't want to have things in our life that we're not sharing. And I don't mean go share with anybody on the side of the road. I mean, share with people who love you and care about you and who are going to sit down and listen. And again, like we've just talked about, tell you the truth.
Right.
I'm so grateful to the people in my life that literally looked in my eyes and said, you're killing yourself. And we don't want this to happen to you, and just told me the truth. And I was like so mad at them. I was like, you're overreacting, and it's like, it's true. It was that tough love. Yeah. That's the biggest thing is reach out and talk. And if you are in a place where you're suicidal and you're isolating and you don't feel like you have anybody around you that you can trust, the suicide hotline these are trained professionals that they have had suicide in their life. They've seen the consequences of it, and they devote their time to be on those hotlines to help people. So it's coming from a very sacred place in their hearts. And that's 1-800-273-TALK is the suicide hotline.
Yeah, and we'll put up a graphic of that too, so people could actually see it.
Great.
Be able to do that. And it's also on your website too.
Yes.
So, yeah. And if people want to know your website, it's www.nicolegearing.com. So the other thing I have to say is now we have this issue going on with the COVID-19.
Right.
And stay home orders and social distancing. I would guess it's got to be hard for a lot of people who are battling addiction, depression, not to succumb to the loneliness and temptations they face. What are some of the things that people can do to beat these feelings?
There's a lot of lives. Celebrate Recovery National Team has in that celebraterecovery.com. They have Facebook Lives every evening, 7 days a week at 6 p.m. My husband, Jim, and I also do Facebook Lives at 7 p.m. on Mondays. And if you get connected with celebraterecovery.com, a lot of those lives also have a Zoom that in the evenings that you can get on Zoom with. It's a small group on Zoom, because in Celebrate Recovery we have men's groups and we have women's groups and separate. And so this is how they have been able to do it during the COVID, is to get on the Zoom, and then everybody can still continue to share. It is a way that you can remain connected, and it's been very, very effective. I've been very surprised at how effective it has been. I was very skeptical when COVID first hit, because we were meeting with our group, together tangibly, everybody in a room. And of course we can't do that anymore once COVID hit. So we started doing the Facebook Lives and then the Zooms at 8 o'clock. And I was extremely skeptical about, oh, it's not going to work. It's in the computer and it's not the same. And it's been very effective. People have been able to maintain their recovery. And people who have heard about it have jumped on and been able to really receive a blessing and feel like they've been heard.
Right. Now, that's something that's searchable on Zoom, like they could go in and type and search for a certain room and join it. Is that how it works? Or?
Well, what they would do is they would watch a Facebook Live, and on that Facebook Live, they would ask, on the comments section, they would ask, where can I join a Zoom
Mm-hmm.
call? Right. And then you don't have to put anything on Facebook that's private. You can just have somebody will get in contact with you, and they'll have you connect with somebody. They'll have you connect with a group in your area, because a lot of the Celebrate Recoveries now have gone virtual. The groups that used to be in the church, that used to be meeting at the church, they're now doing it virtually. So you live, wherever you live, you can go to celebraterecovery.com, put in your zip code, and it'll give you a 20-minute radius of a Celebrate Recovery. And then you can go on Facebook and look for that Celebrate Recovery, and then they can guide you to get to the Zoom.
That's great. Now, what do we do about the people who don't have computers, that are down and out, and the last thing that they want to do is even go on a computer? Do somebody who listens to your podcast, is there advice you could give them that they can go and help the person that doesn't have access to a phone or a computer and they just need help? So what kind of advice can we give one of our listeners here and let them go and help somebody that doesn't have the luxury to see what we're putting together right here?
Right. And that's called suit up and show up. Get ready, drive in your car and go visit people, do a welfare check on them. That's what our law enforcement does. When you can't get a hold of somebody, they'll do a welfare check. I call it a family friend welfare check, where you just go and check in on people, go to their home and check in on them.
So what should they do though? Like, besides check on them, is there any kind of advice that you would give them and say, listen. Hey? Yeah,
just sit and listen. We live in a world where we're not heard. We're really not heard. There's so much distraction. There's so much going on. Like I'm working with somebody right now who lost her husband in February. And I call her every morning at 8:15 and I pray with her and I listen. And I don't fix, although I tell her, I wish I could fix this, because I am a fixer and I'm capable of doing that. Obviously I can't fix that situation and I can't fix a lot of situations, but I do listen. I show up and listen. So they could just go to that person and just sit down and listen. And even if there's silence, they're not alone. You're with them. And also ask the pointed questions. Ask the hard questions. Are you suicidal? Do you feel like hurting yourself? Have you thought about hurting yourself in the last 24 hours? Do you have a plan? And if the answer to that is yes, then be with them as they call the suicide hotline number. And if it's even more of a problem where you think you can't leave because it might happen right away, then you call law enforcement.
That actually leads me to another question. So when you ask somebody that, have you tried to hurt yourself, or do you have feelings of hurting yourself? A lot of people realize that if they answer that question as yes, that means cops are going to be called and they're going to be taken away, and they're deathly afraid of that, so they lie.
They can lie, and there's not a whole lot that you can do. So you can do it another way. You can drive them to the hospital yourself. It doesn't have to be as intrusive as calling the police. And I've had to do that before. I've had to call the police before, and I've had to take people to the emergency room before for that very reason.
Right.
And the whole time, my dialogue is, I love you, I care about you, you're in a space now that you really can't make really good decisions, so I'm gonna make this decision for you because I love you and I care about you. Let's just get you some help. Because there is help for mental health. There is help for suicide prevention. There is help. It just takes a lot of courage to show up. And even if you think somebody is lying, I mean, you know, you gotta still try. You gotta still ask the questions. You gotta be even more strong and say, okay, you're lying to me. I'm concerned about you. I love you. Let's go to the hospital. Let's call your doctor. Let's reach out. So you can call your doctor. You can call the suicide hotline. You can go to the hospital. You can call their family. You can get a group of people around them and do an intervention on their life. And I would go to any length. And I've had people say to me, if you take me to the hospital, I'll be mad at you. And I said, well, you know what? I can handle you being mad at me, because if you're mad at me, you're alive.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You don't mind somebody being mad at you in that type of situation, especially if you're going to save their life. Absolutely. If they want to be mad at you, they're going to be mad at you. It's nothing that you can do about it.
If they're mad, they're alive. And that's what I care about.
You do. But also at the same token, there's too much where people are pointing their fingers and judging, and that's the last thing somebody wants to hear. They want to be listened to. They want to be felt like they're cared about, like they matter. When you start criticizing people in that kind of state, it doesn't help.
It doesn't help. And also it's important to recognize that they're not, if they're in a suicidal state, whether it be drug induced or whether it be depression and anxiety, which is very, very real. If they are in that state, they're not thinking clearly. And so they need somebody to intervene for them. Like if we go to a hospital or we go to a doctor's office, they need we take an advocate with you. They need an advocate to advocate for their life. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, now, especially I'm going back to the COVID-19 stuff, you know, some things are starting to open up again. Some places opened up and started spiking. But so what happens now for somebody that's in recovery, like yourself, and you go to a party or an event and people are around you drinking? How do people react to it? How do you react to it? And what's your advice to other people of how they should react to situations that are very uncomfortable like that? And also, does it go in stages?
Yes, it goes in, first I'll answer that it goes in stages. When I first was in recovery the first year, there was no way on God's green earth that I was going to a party where people were drinking alcohol. It was just too painful for me. It was too much of a trigger for me. But now 9.5 years later, I could go to a party and I'm not concerned about what everybody else is doing, because that's their business. And if I'm at a party, I'm probably there with people that I love and who are my friends anyway. And it's not, I don't feel I operate in freedom. So I don't feel the compulsion to tell people, well, you shouldn't drink. You hear my story. That's their business, and let them go and have a good time, because they don't have a problem with it. I do. So if I'm going to go to a party and I can take somebody with me, like my husband or a friend, I'll do that. I've gone to parties before where there's been alcohol served. And when I get to a point where I think, you know what, I'm tired and I'm ready to go, then I just leave. But I can do that now, but I go with accountability and a plan. In other words, I've talked to my sponsor. She knows I'm going. We have a plan. She says to me, if you start to feel uncomfortable, just leave. And so I make plans, and I stick to the plan. And I go home and I call my sponsor and I'll say I did it, you know. And It's my problem. It's what I deal with. I have an accountability team that holds me accountable. And I love lots and lots of people who drink. The alcohol is not, to me, is not a problem for other people, and it is for me. So I don't place my problems on that problem on other people. I
Right.
just let them where they are, and I take care of me with accountability.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I could imagine that when somebody's first recovering,
Yes.
a lot more fresh, and it's a lot more harder for them to resist
It
having
is.
to drink.
I'm sorry, Billy. No, it's not recommended to go because
Yeah.
you're still being afflicted with memories and things that trigger you, and you're just so vulnerable and you're just so raw. And so I didn't go. And so in reality, the real truth of the matter is I probably didn't go anywhere where alcohol was served for 5 years.
5 years. That's good. I mean, that's kind of was my next question, to see how long it took you before
Yeah.
you started to feel comfortable about, going in and
Yeah.
being around people who were drinking.
And I know that a lot of people, because I'm in recovery, they feel uncomfortable. So I try to do my best to make sure that they understand that they don't have to take care of me. They don't have to do anything different, that I have a plan. I have accountability. I know when it's my go time. It's time to go.
Yeah.
And then I'll leave. And, maybe sometimes it's 2 hours, maybe sometimes it's 4 hours. I mean, it all depends on how I'm feeling. And so I'm just really pay attention to that. And again,
Yeah.
have a
Right.
so, but definitely, and it's understandable that people feel uncomfortable. It's completely understandable, but I don't want them to. I always want, because I love them where they are, and I want them to love me where I am. So,
Of course. More importantly, how do people handle you? Like, so do they try not to drink around you? Like, people that do they not share some of the things that are fun that involve alcohol? Like, for instance, I like to take my jet ski out. I'm on the water. I go to a local restaurant that has a dock in the back. I'll dock my jet ski, go have a couple of drinks, and I have a good time. So do people avoid telling you, like, oh, I had a great time at the bar and I had a couple of drinks and got, blah, 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 blah. Like, do people avoid telling you things if you ask them, hey, what'd you do this weekend? And they said, hey, I went out and I had a couple of drinks. So we had a barbecue, we had a bunch of people, we were drinking and having fun or whatever. Like, do people avoid telling you those things, or it doesn't matter?
there are a group of people that do avoid telling me. And it always makes me chuckle because it's like, if you only knew how much I used to drink. So it's like, I lived that life. Excuse me, I lived that life. So it's, and it's not, and it was taking me down the pathway of death. So it's not for me.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you can't share with me,
Right.
that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
most of the time people are pretty forthright and open
Yeah,
because
well, that's a very, very important thing. And I just was kind of curious because, I could imagine that you experience that all the time, and people really don't ask that question or talk about it. But, sometimes you're like, oh, well, I shouldn't say this or I shouldn't say that because I don't want to, and I guess some people are stronger than others, and some people might feel, like, hey,
I need to protect.
I remember those times and that sounds kind of good, and
Yeah.
fall back. So how do you protect yourself from,
Well, I think because for me, of the progression of where I ended up, there were times that in the beginning, I felt like it was a really good time, and it was in the beginning, but at the very end, it was mixing benzodiazepines with alcohol, and my husband coming home and almost finding me in the bathtub, and just taking too many medications with alcohol and praying to God that I don't die, thinking that I was going to die and not wake up because I wasn't sure if I took just a little bit too much. So the end of it was so dark for me that it really doesn't have an interest for me.
yeah,
Because it was such a sad, dark place for me at the end that, and I'm grateful for that, because that's really a level of protection for me.
right. Well, like, I've known a few people in the past in my life that's had issues with alcohol.
Sure.
So it caused them to make, poor decisions. They call in sick to work. Sometimes they've had DWI issues. Um, so what do you say to people who say they don't need help, that they enjoy having a drink or two and being sociable and they don't have a problem? Do you buy that? Are they in denial? Have you come across an alcoholic that is cured? I mean, meaning that they can go out and drink and have two drinks and put it down and walk away. Is that even possible?
I haven't met anybody that that's possible with. I haven't met anybody that that's possible with. Yeah, I know I've met a lot of people who are alcoholics, and they think that enough time has gone by so they could go back and try, and then they end up in a very dark place in no time. What I would say to somebody that's in a lot of trouble, if you're experiencing death, and I don't mean death like, I mean death, there's all kinds of death, and then obviously the ultimate death is when we leave this earth and die. But if you have DWIs, divorces, losses of jobs, that's a death in your life. If you're experiencing that and you're saying that you don't have a problem, you are in denial. And I understand denial because, you know, I did that, you know, in that 5 treatment programs, there was some time that went by. And so I would go to these treatment programs. I used to call myself the relapse queen, because I would wait a little bit of time and I'd be like, okay, enough time's gone by, you know.
Right.
And I was in denial. And so I would just lovingly, kindly and I would just be really real with them, because the reality of the whole thing is where they're headed. The pathway to where they're headed is going to lose more and more and more. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to lose everything. You don't have to come as far down as I did. You can stop earlier. And there's a lot of like-minded people that are there to help you and share their story with you.
Yeah. You know, there's an interesting thing that I've seen with that word denial.
Yeah.
I can share it here. It's somebody told me this. It was, didn't even know I am lying.
Right. I like that.
Yeah, how do you like that?
If I may use that, I like that.
Yes, use it.
Yeah, right? I know. And so I think the way to combat that, the only way to combat denial is honesty. And that's, again, that tough love. If you love somebody and they're headed down the wrong path, you know, I have a family member who's on that path. And I say to this person, you know, when you're ready, I've been where you are. And when you're ready of not having all this stuff and paying all this money to get yourself out of this situation, call me, because I'm not going to judge you. And I love you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just was curious because I know a lot of times people will say, I could go have a couple of drinks. I could go have a couple of beers and put it down, because they feel like, okay, they did rehab. They feel like they're in a better place. And they really don't feel like they have that problem where they can go and say, I'm going to go out to dinner tonight. I'm going to have a couple of glasses of wine. I'm going to put it down. And here's what the tricky part is. I have seen people that confuse me as far as what a textbook alcoholic is. I would go out to dinner and we would share like maybe a pitcher of beer, and it was fine. We would go home. And then it was the next night, it was a pitcher, and then it was, let's stop and get a 6-pack on the way back home. Then it was the pitcher, and the next night it was a 12-pack, and then it was another 12-pack, and it was almost like a 2-week cycle where it started off very innocent.
We call that binge, a binge.
A binge. It's a binge. That's exactly what it is. And it confuses somebody like me because that's not reality to me. So I'm sitting there going like, that's not an alcoholic. An alcoholic is somebody that's drunk all the time. So there's different types.
There are different types, but it's still a substance that's taking a hold of you and, and taking and controlling you, because that's really what it is if it's controlling you, then there's some addiction going on.
Right. And it's a tough thing to go through. It really is. When you don't have a problem and you're with somebody that does, it's very hard to deal with, you know.
it's really hard to deal with, and it's crucial to speak truth.
Yeah.
It just to speak truth, like, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard because they're going to get mad at you, and I don't know, I don't know about you, but I don't like it when people are mad at me.
No, nobody does. Nobody does. It doesn't help. It doesn't help you. I mean, you know, I think most people beat themselves up. You know, I know I do. I know I'm pretty hard on myself. I think most people probably are, especially if they're in a situation where they start developing low self-esteem because of, you know, certain things that are happening in life. And then if you have somebody that's there that's being critical of you,
Right.
they're not helping you become better. They're actually making you worse.
Well, and that's where you're absolutely right, and that's where there's this saying that my dad has said. He says, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So, you know, when I confront people or do interventions with families or interventions with people who are struggling with addiction, and that is what you described to me was an addiction. A 2-week binge is an addiction.
Yeah.
And the problem with a 2-week binge and a problem with an alcoholic or somebody who struggled with addiction, they can go and have a couple of drinks, and then again they may be able to go and have a couple of drinks and another couple of drinks for a while, and then it'll take them again.
Yeah.
But what my dad used to say is again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So if you just approach somebody with that, look, I love you, like I was sharing with you about a family member that I have, it's like, I love you, I've been where you are, I'm not judging you. When you're done with this insanity, call me, because I am going to surround you and love you and get you connected with some resources. You don't have to live this way.
Yeah, that's really great. Um, a lot of people today have taken their own lives, and it's a big problem. You know, it's very sad for me. I've been down before. I've been depressed. I felt like I would be better off if I wasn't around. I know there is hurt, but each time that I felt like that, you know I thought of 3 or 4 things to stop myself not to do anything. You know, I have a few stories of people I know that have taken their lives or wanted to. So how do we help people before they hurt themselves? Like, I have a very, very close um, cousin of mine, and her son was 18 years old, and Christmas morning, he took his life. And so it was kind of shocking to me. And, you know, it's been about a year and a half since, you know, it happened. And, you know, I still can't talk to her on the phone. Like, if I get 30 seconds out of her before she loses it, you know, and it's just a horrible thing. But I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know if it was because of drugs or what the circumstances were, but it turned out it was over a girl, you know, like a breakup. And it's just a horrible thing, especially for hear so many things with younger people today where they're taking their lives, whether they were bullied or whether they broke up with somebody, or, you know, or they just feel lost. And they have, and it's like, you would think that in today's day and age, we would have so much information for help. So what do we do? Like, how do we help people that are feeling down? I mean, I know for me, like, I started to think like, you know, I thought to myself, well, you know, I have my mom, and I could never do that to my mom. I have my children, I can never do it to them, you know? So that's what I started to think about. And so I never really took it seriously, but I've had those thoughts where I felt like sometimes I would be better. Like, what would it matter if I'm here or not? Like, you almost feel like your life doesn't mean anything. So I'm a pretty upbeat and positive and optimistic person. And I feel like if I could feel like that at certain times, a lot of people don't know how to get themselves out of feeling that way. So what do you think? What are some suggestions for you that you think could help people from, or knowing somebody that, or what are the signs that could help prevent stuff like this before it happens?
Well, again, thank you for sharing that. I'm so very sorry for your friends, the loss for your friend's son. It just breaks my heart, just
Yeah.
all of it. I just want to fix it, and I want it all to go away. And it feels like a really bad nightmare. And on one hand, on the other hand, it motivates me to continually speak on it,
Yeah.
to prevent any more deaths. Again, you've heard me say earlier in the podcast, we're only as sick as our secrets.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think, as a nation, as a community, as a family, as a unit of friends, we just need to start talking about to one another and asking those questions. Are you okay? How
Right.
are your relationships? How's your relationship with your girlfriend? How's how's your relationship with your boyfriend? How is life? How is school going? Are you feeling under pressure? We just need to talk and share and ask the questions and watch and pay attention and know the resources. And I think the greatest thing is, if you have somebody in your life that you think is suicidal, go to a counselor, go to Celebrate Recovery, equip yourself on what you can do to look for the signs, because there are signs.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people beat themselves up because they miss the signs, but remember, we live in a very busy world. And the person that is suicidal and is really, really struggling, they're trying to keep it from you. So there's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
secrets.
it scares me. I mean, as a father,
Absolutely.
it bothers me. And, every time something happens with one of my kids, even if it's a minor tragedy, you're thinking like, okay, are they going to be all right? Are they going to handle this okay? I think too many times parents take things too lightly when it comes to their children, and they're just like, oh, they're withdrawn and they're just playing video games and they're in there and they're just doing this because they're just teenagers. That's just the way they are. They get wrapped up with their friends and the phone and like video games. But you have to stay in communication with your children. You have to.
Yes, and those are signs. The things that you
Yeah.
described are signs. Withdrawing, isolating are signs. Depression, anxiety are signs. Hanging out with the wrong group are signs. Getting anger spurts are signs. Anger, eruptions are signs. Pay attention to the signs. Equip yourself.
Yeah,
Go.
tell me some of those signs, because if there's a parent that's listening to us right now
Yes.
and they don't know what the signs are, what are the signs?
Withdrawing, if your child is withdrawing, if your child quits communicating with you, if they start giving you one word answers and they're very, if they're dressing dark, if they're hanging out with a group of people that you're not approving of, start asking questions, start getting snoopy, go to a counselor. If you don't want, I've said this so many times to families, if your child doesn't want to go to a counselor, you and the rest of the family go.
Right.
Go to a counselor and get equipped on how to help. Interventions are something that are not just on television. Interventions can take place at any moment, at any time. It means to intervene on something that you have a red flag about. And you're going to start asking questions. You're going to pay attention. You're going to go to that person and tell them that you love them, you care about them. If they want to talk, you're here. Show up and listen. Get them into counseling. If they refuse to go, you go.
Right.
Get them into support groups, Celebrate Recovery. They refuse to go, you go. There's a lot.
I think you have to. Yeah, I think you have to be
advocate.
as a parent, you have to be very aware of change of moods or change of attitudes.
Yes.
Any kind of a change, when you know that that's not your kid.
Right.
Something's up and you just can't be like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just he's a teenager or she's a teenager and that's just what they do.
It's a phase. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like we have to be more involved in our kids' lives.
We have to be more involved. We have to ask questions. We have to not be scared of them.
Right.
I think a lot of parents become scared of their kids.
I think I think that happens with a lot of divorced parents, especially with single moms, because especially with boys and there's a single mom, they just feel like they could run over their mother, because a lot of times, let's face it, the dad was brutal or disrespectful to the mom. That's what they grew up. That's what they saw. So now they're getting older, they got that testosterone, and they feel like, well, what is she going to do to me? So there's this battle, and then the mother, you know, is not that strong, and some moms are, but some just don't know what to do, and they crumble. You know, they'll get lost. They'll be drinking their bottle of wine at night, and while their kid is falling apart, they're falling apart. It becomes a mess for everybody.
And I think that we just need to talk about suicide prevention more. We need to talk about mental illness more. We need to talk it over with our kids, not just talk when there's a problem, talk when there's not a problem. My kids hear about recovery and resources to suicide prevention, domestic violence prevention. They hear it all the time. So they know if they have a friend at college that they can go and do a welfare check.
Yeah.
How are you? Look, my mom's in recovery. She could hook you up to a resource. We could get you in a counseling, and it's on Zoom, and nobody would ever know. They think you're in a class.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
offer services and resources, and just show up and then listen and ask the hard questions. Are you okay? Do you think about taking your life?
Yeah. A couple more questions. The show on Netflix, 13 Reasons Why. Have you seen it?
I've not seen it, but I'd love to see it. So tell me a little bit about it.
It's a show about high schoolers, and one girl kills herself. And before she kills herself, she made 13 recordings of each reason why she decided to kill herself. This is a real problem, especially with teenagers. There are real struggles in the world. They seem to have the weight of the world on their shoulders. And bullying and rape is a huge problem, as well as drugs and alcohol. You have children, and do you keep your communication with them open?
Yes, they probably would say that I drive them nuts because I talk to them so much.
Right. I mean, it's a scary thing. Like when I watch this show, I sit there and I go into this mode of, wow, because when I was in high school, it was pretty bad, but I felt like I could handle myself. But maybe it's a kind of a different world today. Everything's kind of wide open. I think the internet has made information too accessible to kids, that they know things that I would have never even dreamed of at that age, and it's just too wide open. And what happens is that they go to school, somebody gets picked on, somebody gets bullied. There's all different types of kids now, like piercings are acceptable and tattoos are acceptable. And some of them, some people are just kind of like scary looking. And some people like just flat out bullies. And that's another whole topic for another time. But, and then you mix in drugs because they feel that peer pressure that they have to do things. Like they have to smoke pot, they have to do coke, they have to take pills, and it's just, it's a scary place to be. So when you see all these things that go on in the show, kind of hits home that the kids today really have a lot to go through. And one of the things that I realize is that a lot of parents are really kind of absent with their careers and everything else. And it's like there's this absenteeism when it comes to parents. And I don't think a lot of us realize that, but it's a heavy burden on society. And it's something that I think we need to do something about. So how do we get parents to start being a little bit more responsible and aware, and keeping that communication open and finding out what's really going on at school?
Well, I think it's never too late. If you've been a parent and you haven't really been involved in your child's life, it's never too late to start being involved and being intentional. I just think that parents, knowing that the distractions and knowing the temptations that are going on in today's day and age, I know that they're busy trying to make ends meet and to make marriages work and make families stay together, but really need to be intentional in listening to their kids, because their kids are trying to speak to them, but they just may be so busy they're not listening. COVID has been a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It is a problem. And I'm so horrified at what's going on and the people who are dying. However, the good part about it, if you're going to find something good, because you can find something good in anything, the good part about it is it's given us a chance to all slow down and be together as a family more. And
Yeah.
we need to take that part of COVID and keep that in our family system of checking in on our kids.
Right.
Asking the questions, who are your kids, who are your friends, have them come over. My house was where all my friends came over, my kids' friends all came over here. And I did that intentionally.
Yeah, you want to get to know who they are and who they're hanging out with and what kind of person they are and so forth and so on.
Tell me
You
who you
know?
hang out with, I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think parents just need to, you know, and I don't want to say need to, I like I'm implying that I'm placing judgment that they're not doing a good job at all. That's not what I'm saying, because I raised 3 boys and I understand all of the pressures of having children and marriage and just everything, you know, and plus my addiction that I had, which didn't help matters. But recovery, where I learned a new set of tools, where I began myself to listen. Because I began to listen, I've learned to listen to my kids. And so I think that one of the ways that we can do that, and also again, Celebrate Recovery is a great resource. Any hurt, habit, or hang up. If you have a situation going on in your home and you have a child or children that they're not listening to you, go where you're going to be heard and where you could be surrounded by a group of people who are like-minded and probably have the same situation, and you can be supported and learn a whole other set of tools.
Yeah, leaning on people that have been through it is a very important thing. Yeah.
Absolutely, because it, you know, we all think when we get so busy and we're kind of just go, we start to think as humans that we're the only ones. Like, oh, I'm the only person that's going through this.
Right.
That's not true. That's
Yeah.
not true. There's lots and lots of people who've gone through very similar struggles who can be a huge resource of comfort and encouragement.
Yeah, I agree. So I think we're about to wrap this up. If anyone that's listening to this right now, and if they're still listening, it's pretty good. Okay. If they're, you know, if they're struggling right now and listening to us, tell us what they should do. How can we start saving lives instead of losing them? And what kind of, is there anything that you could resource that you could give them right now that they could go to that would help them immediately?
Yes, they're celebraterecovery.com. And also, I want to say that if you go to my website, NicoleGearing.com, and you reach out to me, I will find you a treatment program. And also, again, Celebrate Recovery for any hurt, habit, or hang up, where you can go, find new tools, have a new group of people where you can be heard and supported. And again, that's celebraterecovery.com. Put in your zip code in the group locator, and it will show you what churches are up and going. And there have been some churches in our nation that have opened up and are starting again. So there are live meetings. There are also celebraterecovery.com live meetings virtually at 6 o'clock Pacific time. And also, New Life Spirit, it is a place where they do counseling services. There's also Teen Challenge is another area. But please go to NicoleGearing.com and tell me what your situation is, and I will find the help and the resource that you need. You are cared about, you're loved. If you need immediate help, go to 1-800-273-TALK for suicide prevention. 1-800-799-SAFE for domestic violence. Those are the 2 areas that mean the very most to me if you're in an unsafe situation. Reach out and talk to somebody and tell somebody how you are feeling, and just tell them, I don't want it fixed, I just want you to listen and share, because remember, you're only as sick as your secrets, and there is hope for new beginnings and a brand new start.
Thank you, listeners, for listening to this podcast. And on behalf of Nicole and myself, I would like to say thank you for coming. You owe it to yourself to go to NicoleGearing.com. That's NicoleGearing.com. Nicole is a successful model, a spokesmodel. She's a great mother, great wife, and she was in a place that probably most people wouldn't think that she would be here today, if at all. So she has an amazing story. Please tune back in for our next episode, and thank you, and God bless you.